All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Let Beauty Guide You. So, today we're going to be talking about the healing benefits of forgiveness with Jessica Santonato, author of Flip the Script. Hi, Jessica.
Hey, Chelsea. How are you?
Good. So before we get into anything, I just kind of want to give everyone like a little bit of a trigger warning that today topics like abusive relationships and criminal activity and other explicit content may come up. So if this is not the time for you to listen, please honor yourself, take care of yourself, and maybe tune into another episode or wait for the next one. And most importantly, we are going to be focusing on the topic of forgiveness today. So allow me to introduce Jessica. Jessica Santonato is a TEDx speaker and award-winning author. In her most recent memoir, Flip the Script, she shares how she went from living a criminal lifestyle where she was exposed to sexual and emotional abuse to now where she lives a life of purpose as a philanthropic leader. Motivated to turn pain into her purpose, Jessica founded Flip the Script, a story-sharing community based in Toronto, where everyday people have the opportunity to share how they've overcome adversity and discovered the gift in their pain. So proceeds for these events support the story-sharing program From the Streets to the Stage, for males who've been or are currently incarcerated and or who are recovering from addiction. So welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here today.
I appreciate you having me on, Chelsea.
Yeah. So I've provided a little bit of context on your most recent memoir, Flip the Script there, but can you share with us your story and what motivated you to write Flip the Script?
Yeah, so Flip the Script is my journey of going through a criminal lifestyle. And I say that, I got involved with gangs, not directly, but associating with gang members from the age of 15 and 16, experiencing rape. And then 17, I met a guy who was a gang leader. And I married him while he was incarcerated. So I was 18 years old, married him in a federal penitentiary. And we had 3 kids together, a lot of great times, a lot of abusive times. And he tried to kill me years later, so almost 10 years into our marriage. And I left and I forgave him, not to get back together, but I forgave him and forgave uh, the guy who instigated the gang rape years ago. So I got a lot of freedom with forgiveness, and all of that, was the best thing that's ever, well, besides the birth of my kids, the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I now get to do the work that I do now in serving these men with criminal histories and addiction histories.
Thank you, Jessica. For myself and many readers, like you said, probably the most remarkable detail about your story is that you did forgive your ex-husband who abused you and tried to kill you. And I think maybe for some people, that might be a little triggering and even make them uncomfortable, or like they don't really understand how, or like can't reconcile how something like that could happen and then someone could forgive. So could you maybe share more about why you chose to forgive your ex-husband, like what that made available for you and kind of the process through that?
Yeah, so for me, it didn't make sense to have what someone else did affect me and disable me in terms of me living my life and moving forward. And at the time, I remember thinking, I don't want somebody's energy to take me down. It just didn't make sense. So if I was hanging on to resentment, it was almost like letting the other person win. And that was my original thought and my beginning stages of forgiveness. When I say forgiveness, it's the person, the other person in question. However, more importantly, it's for ourselves. So I went through both of that, both things, forgiving myself, forgiving him, forgiving the other people as well. And it, I make this analogy where a lot of people try to keep putting on a bandage of positive thinking and positive affirmations without clearing out the old stuff and addressing the pain that's there for them. And it's really important to be able to process those human emotions because we are human and this is the experience that we're here to have. And if we didn't have the contrast, we wouldn't really get to what we want in life. So so we need that. And I think um, a lot of people shove what hurts under the rug. It's easier to avoid it, but then you're trying to paint on a dirty canvas. So when you're asking, well, like, what does that make available for me now? Well, it makes available a whole new life. Like the world is at my fingertips. I can now create whatever I want because I don't have anything in the way. So there's no past in my present, as you know, there's no resentment that's taking up space in my creative world right now. So it's allowed me to experience my full potential. And some of my talks, I say, when you're holding back from your full potential. And what's the cost of that each day that goes by? So every day that you're hanging on to resentment, there's an impact in your life. There's a cost to that. So, yeah, it just didn't make sense for me to give my energy away like that, to deplete my energy, to give it away. And forgiveness has just, I always say forgiveness is freeing, and it really is because you're not thinking about the past and you're not hurt in the past. You can actually live in the present moment.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I think like some people collapse forgiveness with like condoning or encouraging behavior, but forgiveness, like you said,
Right.
is like really about releasing for yourself. And then it's not to say that you shouldn't set healthy boundaries after, or create a safe space for yourself. It's just really about releasing your own emotional energy. And then
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, the boundaries are really important to have. And what I see is a lot of people make forgiveness a morality issue. So it's one of those, well, what they did is wrong. And because they're wrong, I'm not going to forgive them, or they have to earn my forgiveness. But no, they don't. And if we can take away the labels of what they did was wrong, you can approach things differently, because when you hang on to that judgment, and that judgment being like what you did was wrong and I'm right in the situation, no one moves forward. Like, it's the label we put onto that action. It might be irresponsible, it might be out of integrity, yes, but if we can take away that label of being wrong, then it helps erase that judgment that we tend to have of you screwed up and you don't deserve forgiveness. And again, in saying that too, it's like, who are we to make that judgment call, and who are we to say you don't deserve forgiveness, or you deserve forgiveness? It's not up to us. Every soul is on their own journey. And when people say, yeah, but they hurt me and I don't know if I can forgive them, one of the things that helped for me is to look at that other person in question and go, you know what? I accept that that was the highest level of love they were able to express in the moment.
Mm,
And that's really big because that's honoring them on their own journey. We know hurt people hurt people. We know everyone evolves at different rates. So accepting them from a place of love instead of judgment, instead of ego, which I'll say, like, I look at things and go, is this coming from the soul or is this coming from ego? And soul would be love. And ego, even though we need our ego isn't coming from a place of love. So when you look at somebody that you might be debating, should I forgive them? Shouldn't I forgive them? Think, if coming from a soul perspective, what would that look like? Which is love.
mm,
Because all of that holding on to resentment stuff is just all ego speaking.
right. Yeah, and I love how you brought up all the soul journey stuff. And you partly dedicate the book to your ex-husband, and you say, and to Dee, thank you for being part of my soul's incredible growth. I honor you and know you're always around, and I love you. And I'm like reading about this, I'm like preparing for the podcast, and there's a lot describing your rise to consciousness, right? Which got you to a place where you could forgive and honor the soul of your ex-husband. So, can you maybe share about the tools and experiences that gave you this perspective and led you to this place of peace and forgiveness? Like, how did you kind of foster this level of consciousness?
It was over time. So, this in a couple months would be 10 years since the attack, right? And when I say attack, I mean when he tried to kill me. So,
Mhm.
10 years, we're always growing. And so when people say, like, I don't know how you did this, or, you're doing so many great things now, just remember that I'm also 10 years deep, after the actual attack. So again, it's been different layers of healing and personal development. I've done courses. I, I've done a few psychologist sessions that helped at the beginning. However, going forward, it was more personal development, a lot of reading, spiritual reading, getting into, meditation, and even for me, plant medicines at some point. So it's been different factors in there that have contributed to where I'm at now.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say this was the solution.
Right.
It's very much a culmination of everything over the last few years, and definitely changing up my network into one that's conscious and spiritually based. I found for me really helped in healing and moving forward and leading from a place of love and compassion.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I know in your book you mentioned you did like just a ton of different things. So I guess it's just being in the world of raising your consciousness is what really helps, I guess. And over time,
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
beautiful. So in your forward, you say, despite what some people might expect, I don't go to domestic violent events or attend rallies with a sign that reads, Stop the Violence. The world doesn't need more protests or marches. It needs more understanding and patience. It needs less judgment. It needs more love. So you've already kind of mentioned this and shared like what you mean by this perspective. But can you maybe relate that to the work that you're doing now in prisons and um, how this like philosophy of the world needing more love relates to your work now in prisons?
Yeah, so I work in the criminal justice area, which is funny. I did not expect this, but this is what it's naturally transitioned into. And I always say that you can't fight fire with fire.
Mhm.
And so we have a system, and everyone likes to call it the system that doesn't work. And there are a lot of moving parts to this so-called system, and there is a lot of it that just doesn't work. And so to come at it with blame and pointing fingers, it it doesn't work. There's more resistance. So for me, I always believe in focusing on what you do want instead of what you don't want. And so me envisioning a world that leads with love and compassion, how can we approach the system by bringing love and compassion, because that's what we want, not the fighting. And I get that there's a lot of issues and a lot of different, and I'm very passionate about those as well. And so here's an example. So, you know, there are many stories of racism that people who are incarcerated encounter, or say even beatings, just general mistreatment. And so we look at someone like a frontline officer, say a correctional officer, dealing with them directly. Well, instead of blaming that correctional officer or the system, how can we bring more love and compassion? So now I'm looking at, okay, well, because we know hurt people, just like the people that are incarcerated. Well, on the flip side, what's happening with those who are on the front lines? What kind of traumas have correctional officers experienced in their own lives, whether that was back in childhood or whether it was from the job what hurts are they going through and not getting support with, because everyone's in that whole system together. So we can't have these people that are not getting support, which I'm told that it's a big gap. So there's a wide lack of support for these officers. So what can we do to support them, to help them heal, to help them come from a place of love? Because when that changes, then you can start to see the ripple effect of the way they treat the people who are incarcerated, right? So again, there are a lot of issues out there, but it, even the approach of trying to um yeah, like to fight, like any kind of fighting or protest, like the energy just doesn't feel right to me.
Mhm.
So again, it's focusing on what you want instead of what you don't want. And it's not a common approach. So the love and compassion thing can seem like, yeah, well, in an ideal world, and but I don't know. I look at it like it's 2020. Like, why can't we come from a place of love? Why can't we focus on humanity? Why can't we focus on dignity for people who are incarcerated, and really push that forward? Not just talk about it like, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like actually come from a true place of love and compassion.
And in relation to that, I was doing some reading up on abusive personalities and abusive relationship dynamics. And there's kind of this idea out there that, like, once someone is an abuser, it's highly unlikely that they will ever change their ways. But do you think that coming from this place of forgiveness and coming from a place of compassion, that could be part of the process of allowing someone to step outside of their own story that they are an abuser and then flip the script, so to speak?
Yeah, totally. It's all about the stories we tell ourselves, right? And even saying that, I get they've done their research and stats might be high in terms of re-abusing and even going on to kill their partner. But to say that, and once an abuser, always abuser, I don't agree with it. I think it's uh, a story. And I mean, hearing that is even like saying like once a criminal, always a criminal, and that's not true. And I've definitely seen that firsthand that that's not true. You can completely transform your life, and it means doing the work, and maybe that means doing extra work, and it's a little bit harder to face shadows and go to the dark side,
Mhm.
but it's doable. And again, I it's the same thing with forgiveness. When people say like, how do I start? And I never give anyone a prescription in terms of like a step, here's step one, two, three. However, the first thing I would say is it starts with you. It starts with making the choice and making that declaration. So I am going to forgive, or I forgive. And even starting there energetically starts to shift things in your life. So, someone that's an abuser, or has abused someone, or has been abused, again, right? Like, not using the victim word. I'm not even fond of the survivor word, because there's nothing to survive. It's something that we experience, and I'm not trying to downplay people's experiences or what, their pains and everything. That's very real. And at the same time, it's something that happened. It's an experience. Now we learn from it, and then we get to move on. And that's the beautiful thing about adversity, is it's presented to us in order for us to grow. And a lot of people don't see that. And I've heard things like, bad luck, or they just can't catch a break, or that person's evil. And yet it's like, well, if we take responsibility for our own lives, how did we attract that into our lives? And
Mhm.
that's a hard bullet for a lot of people to bite, because they're like, what do you mean I did nothing? Of course I wouldn't have asked for this. I believe that we do. We create everything around us, all of our experiences, everything that you're looking at now in front of you, everything that's in your life, all the people in your life, you created that.
Mhm.
So just as easily as you created the stuff you do want, you also created the stuff that you don't want. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, on some level we are creating our reality, and it's not so much that we're taking responsibility directly for what has happened to us, but the choices we made leading up to
Yeah.
any situation, right?
Yeah, like I tell people, no one forced me to leave home. No one forced me to hang out with these guys. No one was, bending my arm backwards in 10 places so that I would do those things. I chose every bit of it. I chose the people I hung out with. I chose to keep hanging out with, those involved with those with gangs. So I have to take responsibility as well. And that's part of the self-forgiveness where it's like, okay, I'm part of the cause in this, and so I can also be part of the solution in this. So if you can acknowledge that, then it becomes easier to move forward.
I think that people might hear this conversation like, I didn't want to create this. Like, this isn't what I asked for. But I think like using the distinction of choice as an empowering way to look at it, like, oh, I can choose my way out as well. I can choose love. I can choose compassion. I can choose forgiveness. I can choose healing. Then it becomes more empowering to look at everything from a context of being in a space of choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're making so many choices throughout the day. They even say at the subconscious level, it's something like 35,000 different. I think they use the word decisions instead of choices, but that we make about 35,000. I think that's what I heard the other day. It was something like crazy,
Mhm.
and the majority of that, like 90%, is at the subconscious level.
Right. Wow. It's a lot.
It is,
Our
yeah,
subconscious is running the show, really.
it totally is.
Yeah. So, for anyone who's in the midst of an abusive or unhealthy relationship, or any abuse of any kind, I was gonna ask you what advice you would give them.
Yeah, it's tricky in that, I get the question a lot from loved ones saying, "What can I do for someone, my sister or something like that is in an abusive relationship?" Until somebody is absolutely ready to on their own, they're not going to. Doesn't matter what you say to them. Just keep bringing love, and otherwise, it just goes in one ear and out the other. If I was to say something to those who are in an abusive relationship, to just look at, what are you committed to in your life? Like, is this the way that you're living now? Is this the way that you want to keep living? And the majority of people will consciously say, no, I don't. Like, I want something else, and I just don't know how to get out. And um, again, I don't want to advise on top of, like, going to the police or reporting it or speaking to loved ones. I Again, it goes with it's just starting to make the choice. Like, what are you committed to? And if this is not how you want your life to be, make the decision, make the choice that you are going to turn your life around, that you are going to transform it into something that you do want, and start surrounding yourself with new people. Go into self-development courses, go into spirituality if that calls to you. um you know My relationship with a higher power is really what helped pulled me through, and so that's different for everybody. And and again, this could fall on deaf ears, right? It's like you have to be ready. If somebody stopped me when I was 16 years old or 17 and, like, quote unquote, saved me from what I experienced, I and I knew what I missed out later on, I would have been kicking and screaming, going like, "Why did you stop me?"
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I went through what I went through, because, geez, I've learned a tremendous amount of things, and again, now I get to do the work that I do. So that's why I was saying it's a little bit of a tricky question. Like, until somebody's ready, it's like, hold space for them, keep bringing them love. If you're someone who has someone who's abused in their life, and if you are being abused, maybe it means nothing. And if you are ready, then just take one step. nothing major, even just one little step to reach out to somebody, get help, start reading books, take one action towards the life that you do want.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Um, yeah, and I was going to ask too, can you share more about Flip the Script, the story sharing community you've started, and kind of what value people get out of sharing their stories and these events in general?
Sure. So yeah, Flip the Script is a story sharing community. So we're based outside of Toronto and Vaughan. So we have a public monthly event. Now we have four speakers, four story sharers technically, that come out. They share their stories of overcoming adversity, and that inspires people in the audience to transform their own lives. And that also acts as a stage for graduates of our program. So all of the proceeds from those public events support our story sharing program called From the Streets to the Stage for men with drug and criminal histories. And so they get to flip the narrative on their own experiences and find or reveal, let's say it's instead of find, reveal the gift in their pain, help them heal, give them a place to speak their truth and to live their truth and now live on purpose. And so it's great because every time someone comes out to a public event, they get to help contribute to a man's life and also get inspired. We have a resident DJ, she plays conscious music. We have healthy drinks for purchase, and yeah, it's a really great time. Like it's this really strong curated community, and yeah, it's the first Monday of every month, and then if it's a holiday, then it falls on the following Monday.
Amazing. That's such awesome work. I've got to attend one of these events one of these days.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And can you also share with us a bit more about the work that you do for men in prison? Like when you go to these prisons, what does your day look like, and what is your intention?
Yeah, so I'm my whole thing is around stories, right? And my forgiveness, my message is around forgiveness.
Mhm.
So that's where I like to specialize. I'm someone that likes to give them the floor to open up about whatever they're freaked out about in the moment or whatever they're trying to work through in their lives. I'm one thing I've noticed over the years is I'm really great whether it's in a group or one to one with men because they feel really safe in opening up to me
Mhm.
and sharing things that they can't even share their closest partners. So even though there may be a structure in place, when I go in, I like to give the guys a little bit more time to speak and just share what's on their mind. And that makes a huge difference for them. So every time I'm in there could look completely different from the previous week.
Right.
And yeah, there's a number of guys that have not received love as a child. And so when they see someone like me and they go, wait, you want to help me, but you don't want anything in return. Like, are you sure? And how does that work? And they're a little bit skeptical. Like, how can this be true?
Right.
So it's pretty cool to be able to love on them and not expect anything back and see that extra twinkle in their eye of like, wow, somebody actually cares. And then they start to open up. So, I mean, if it's so rewarding, I don't have words for it. I'm so lit up when I serve these guys.
That's amazing. Yeah, I really see you. I remember when I went to your Flip the Script book release,
Yeah.
and your husband said about you, he's like, Jess just, walks into the world and spreads light everywhere she goes. And that's how
Mm.
I relate to you. And you really just spread light, love, and beauty in the world, really, wherever you are.
Aw, I
So
appreciate that.
yeah, of course. So, with that being said, this podcast is called Let Beauty Guide You. So, what are three ways you let beauty guide you in life?
Three ways. I would say I'm more and more present to the the world around me, like literally, like right now, as you say that, I'm looking outside at my backyard, and even though the trees are still bare, it's still beauty to me. And that we're in this world, like sometimes I'm like, Michael and I have these conversations, and I'm like, isn't it just so perfect how the creator, like you go to hot places and there's coconuts, hanging on trees that stay cool inside, and like the water is there, and the colder climates we have what we need. Like it's so perfect. And oftentimes we don't get to focus on that enough. So for me, simply looking outside at the sky, at the birds, at the trees, the simple things, that's letting beauty guide me. Also, I would say beauty in terms of creativity. Like if there's something in my life where I feel inspired to dance or paint or do poetry, or even dressing up a certain way, or even changing the color of my lipstick, that's letting beauty guide me. And third, it's interesting. I never had anyone ask me this question. How do I let beauty guide me? I would say when I hear the word beauty, I hear flow. So anything to do with, again, I know I address creativity already, but anything to do with creating my life in the moment, and seeing the people around me and asking for what I want, that's all beauty to me. And me, I speak to a higher power, I speak to angels. That's beauty to me. So they, in that, I find a lot of guidance in what I'm supposed to be doing every day of my life.
Wow, that's lovely. So we've got creativity, angels, and kind of like recognition of how in nature things are as they are supposed to be.
Yeah, it's actually perfect how the world is designed, right? Like if we look back like thousands and thousands of years, like we have everything to be self-sufficient
Mhm.
on this earth. And if you look at all of the parts that everything plays, from the little bird to the worms to the to the big oceans to the sky to the sun, like it's all perfect. And I just find so much beauty and magic in that.
Lovely. What a great perspective. I love this. I
I
love-
think I think going through something like I went through as well, where my husband had tried to kill me, it's really given me a different, like we hear these stories, right, of people going through cancer and they survive and then they have a different outlook. I feel it's similar in that since going through that experience, I appreciate life so much more and have become more present to even the creation of life. So, and even honoring the process of birth and then the middle part and then death. And so, yeah, maybe there's that experience that has given me that extra boost in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't been through anything like you have, so I can only imagine that the contrast of what you've experienced versus your present moment is very freeing and gives you a lot of perspective. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your perspective with us and
Oh,
really
my pleasure.
sharing your light and your love and your compassion and your lens with us. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Jess.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me on again, Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
The only thing I would say is forgiveness starts with you. And literally that means like it starts with you making the choice, making the declaration, and it starts with also forgiving yourself and not waiting on anybody else. So forgiveness starts with you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jess. And
You're welcome.
thank you, everybody, for listening to Let Beauty Guide You. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Good one.